Hello, this is Daniel Mart, and this is going to be a bit of a different video overall. Um, so this is something I think I've talked about a few times, and I've definitely done videos within this place. And this is basically, here in Miami, we have a pretty huge, I want to say, a pretty huge theater company called Area Stage Company. They're one of the biggest stage companies, like theater production companies, down here in Miami for sure. Um, and that's basically what I want to talk about in this video. Before I go on with the rest of this video, I want to first preface this. Basically, I want to say that I am not just an angry customer per se. I was a regular customer of theirs per se. I used their services. I guess I attended their classes basically on a somewhat regular basis between the years of late 2014 to early 2015, give or take. And then I became an employee, debatably, and I'll tell you that why in a second. I became an employee of theirs from late 2015 to early 2016. So I do have experience with them. Now, the reason I said I was debatably an employee is because technically I was an intern, so I wasn't really on the payroll and I wasn't really considered an employee. However, I still went there. I did my community service hours for them. And the reason I was an intern there is first off, because I love acting, I love theater, and I already knew everybody there, most everybody there. So I'm like, hey, can I just intern there? And they were like, sure, yeah, no problem. And because for my school, in order to graduate, or at least in the program I was in high school, to graduate, I needed to do an internship, and that again just seemed like the most natural place. So I have experience in this company, for about a year, give or take, and yeah. And granted, I haven't been there in a long time. However, this is just basically explaining my story behind them, because it's something I'm pretty sure I've talked about in the past, and I feel like I'm just ready to talk about it at this point, essentially. It's one of those things I kind of been wanting to make a video on it for some time. I just didn't know how to basically express my feelings without them possibly coming out wrong. And I think I finally found a way to express them. So yeah, that's basically the first thing I want to say, that I've worked with them and I've been a customer of theirs. I've used their services, or I've been in their classes, whatever. So, there's that. Also, this video isn't, my main point of this video isn't to bash them, just to solely bash them. I will be saying a lot of good things about them as well. And in a sense, I guess you can say this is a review of the company as a whole, of Area Stage Company, I suppose. And yeah, and that's so yeah. So I'm basically going to be saying the good and the bad of Area Stage Company. And if anybody associated with Area Stage Company, whether it be like a customer, a parent of one of the students there, or a student themselves, or even the management, if anybody sees this, just keep in mind that hopefully you could use this, or if you're a customer, you could tell them, and so they could use this to improve their business, because I know their business has more or less ran the same way ever since I left, because I still do have a few friends who either still study at Area Stage, or who just go to their shows every here and there. And from what I hear, it seems like the business practices haven't changed a lot, if at all, from when I was essentially fired or quit. Yeah, that part's a bit murky even for me. So yeah, so basically, let me just start off with the good. I started with Area Stage Company in late 2014, which is more or less when I was starting to actually take a real interest in acting, when I was starting to take a hobby, and take it as an actual hobby. I had began acting, like, my first show I've ever done as an actor, I want to say it was like in 2007 or 8, when I was like in 3rd grade, and I was a reindeer for a play for the Polar Express at my elementary school. And after that, it's one of those things I kind of liked, but I never really attempted ever again. It wasn't until the summer of 2014, which I actually did attempt again, and I took some summer classes at the University of Miami. And from there, I actually really enjoyed acting. And I asked my mom, hey, can you put me in more acting classes? And one of the recommendations we got was go to Area Stage Company. They're really great, and they're right by Sunset Place. You know, they're really great. You know, everybody that's really chill. And you know, I was putting classes there, and I actually do have a few videos of me acting in Air Stage Company. Actually, some of my first few videos, I think my very first video, in fact, is me at Air Stage Company, and I did the monologue Before You Punch Me, as well as an improv show. And I have a few other videos of me at Area Stage Company. I have another improv show that I did, as well as two backstage viewings, I suppose, for a play that I was an ASM to, assistant stage manager to, when I was working there, for a year with Frog and Toad. So you know, I do have a few videos of me at Area Stage Company, and definitely they were a huge help in basically giving me a platform to express myself as an actor. I really do think, honestly, I do think I grew as an actor from the start. You know, I learned a lot about improv, and actually I was always really good with improv. To be honest, I found that out in UM, but you know, I just kind of honed my skills a bit more. Started polishing them, you know, doing more dramatic, doing a bit more Shakespeare, for example, and you know, just overall, just starting to polish my skills at that point. And I did that from like, I want to say October of 2014, I want to say, to about March or April of 2015, give or take. That's what I want to say, because those were the fall and spring classes. More or less that's what I want to say. I could be off by a bit, but that's more or less the rough estimate. Besides the point. So you know, I did a lot. You know, I of course did a lot of classes with them, and I really enjoyed them. The reason I stopped essentially was because I just didn't have time. I was handling at the time. I was just at a really bad point in my life. I was basically going through depression at that point. And I just kind of wanted to do, you know, focus on myself, try, you know, better myself mentally, you know, get out the depression, you know, do good in school, because my grades were at that time suffering a bit. So I just, you know, want to do good. Late 2015 rolls around, and I have to do an internship for my just to graduate. So I'm in junior year at this point, and the internship needs to be for both junior year and senior year of my high school time, you know, my high school year. So I thought, you know, do Air Stage Company for both times, both years, and you know, maybe, who knows, get a job there in the future. Look at that, whatever. So I went there, and there's two managers, and there's the main manager and the co-manager, and then you have the assistant manager, I suppose, or she's the assistant to the co-manager for sure. And you know, I'm not gonna say any names, by the way. So yeah, again, if you're affiliated with Air Stage Company, then you may know who I'm talking about. You know, that's basically it. But besides the point. So my boss essentially was the assistant manager, or the assistant to the co-manager, and she essentially was my boss. She was the one who signed off on my hours, and everything more or less started off great. I really, up until that point, in late 2015, which I want to say was August, when I started in August of 2015. You know, everything was great. You know, it was great. You know, I came in early every day, and I liked it. I did the jobs that I needed to do, and basically for the most part, my main jobs were either answering the phone, putting in data into this database they had, passing out flyers, or babysitting the kids. I'm literally not joking when I say babysitting the kids. And yeah, and when I mean kids, it's like kids between the age. They had two classes for kids. It was kids between the ages of 5 and 12, I want to say, or 11, and then from the ages of like 12 and 15, give or take, if I'm remembering correctly. So I was basically a glorified babysitter in that respect, and I didn't get paid. But you know, at first I really didn't mind, because it's not like I babysat them for a long time. It was maybe like for a few minutes while the instructor was out to go use the bathroom or taking a call, whatever. So that wasn't a problem at first. The first issue, I think the first time I actually had an issue with Area Stage Company was really when one day I had to pass out flyers, which was really well and dandy. You know, it was all great. However, they kind of did something they never did. Now, normally when I pass out flyers, it would have been to just Sunset Place, which is the mall that's right across the street from it. Then I'd come back, eat lunch, and then do something else. Put stuff into the database, or babysit kids for a few minutes, or just answer calls, or just be there at the secretary's desk and see who needs help talking to parents, whatever. This day, however, they said, you know what? Sunset Place is here, and Sunset Place is across the street. Then there's another mall about 3 miles down, I want to say 3 or 4 miles down, and it's called Merrick Park. And basically, they said, here's all the flyers. Pass it out to every single business from here down to Merrick Park. Okay. Now I wasn't really expecting to walk. They normally tell me the day before, like so the previous day I came into work, what I'm going to be doing, and they said I was going to pass out flyers. So of course I just thought it was going to be at Sunset Place, and I normally carry this little water bottle. It was like I don't know, but a small little water bottle. Okay. So yeah, and I had already drank it. So when they told me that, I was like, okay. Yeah, I can do it. I can do that. I can do that. I have no problem with that. Screw it, whatever. I just refilled my water bottle and just went there. And I'm not gonna lie, I got dehydrated very fast. Again, it's in part because my heart condition, which that'll be another story if I ever decide to tell on that one. But basically, I got dehydrated very fast. I drank all my water, and I basically had to walk about 3 miles back without any water. Dehydrated as fuck and tired as hell, carrying a box, which by that point when I got back to Air Stage Company the second time, it was already empty. But you just imagine carrying about a 10-pound box, give or take. Obviously it's decreasing as you pass out flyers. But just imagine carrying about a 10-pound box with like very little water, dehydrated, hot as balls. And remember, it's Miami, hot as balls can be, and just doing that. That was honestly I think the very first time I actually had a genuine issue with Air Stage Company, and it kind of just got worse from there. And that was more or less around September, I want to say, like mid to late September, because I remember their show would have been like in early October, so I want to say it was in between mid to late September. So that was the first genuine problem I ever had with them. The second issue, or the second next huge genuine problem, actually had to do with the fact that I had to babysit. Now, before this, again, as I said before, I babysat the kids for about usually no more than 10 minutes while the teacher was out, taking a call, or out in the bathroom, or just talking to the manager, or just doing something to make sure that the show was going as planned. And I'm saying show specifically because another thing I noticed every time I babysat these kids were that compared to when I was there as a student, when I was there, it wasn't a show per se, it was just a showcase. These, however, were actual shows, like they were putting on actual plays, like a year for Frog and Toad, or A Year with Frog and Toad, and Cinderella, were the ones I remember being a part of backstage. And whereas mine were just simple little showcases, which again you can see parts of them, snippets of them on my channel in my very early videos. So, and the reason I kind of have a problem with that, I don't really have a problem with the kids, acting in shows or whatever. But first problem is the fact I was just a glorified babysitter that didn't really get paid. Maybe I'm being a bit petty on that one, but when you're taking care of about 60 kids per day, and after a while it's about 60 kids per day for basically about 3 hours, give me a break. And it's like literally you and maybe one other intern, and that's about it. Give me a break. I'm just saying, kind of give me a break, And even after that, like even during that, they kind of cut down my lunchtime. So yeah, that's when I started actually having genuine problems. Like the issue with the flyers, that was my first genuine problems. But this is when I started having multiple repeated problems with them, and basically started butting heads with the management. Maybe a good idea, maybe not, but you'll see what happened afterwards. So yeah, basically they kind of cut down my lunch to it was like maybe 15 minutes. They cut it down to about 5 minutes. I had to babysit these kids for about 3 hours essentially, about give or take 60 kids combined. And me and just this one other intern. And granted, these kids respected us because we were older and they would pay attention to us, but at the same time, they're kind of hard to handle. And that's, yeah. And the main problem, I think, with the kids, the main problem with the kids, it's not that they were like disruptive. Granted, some of them were disruptive. I'm not gonna lie, but the problem is that they, especially with me, because I was more of a I'm always a child in at heart. The other intern, they also got along with the kids, but I feel like if you were to ask who, actually, I think we did. I think one of the other employees actually did ask the kids one time just for shits and giggles, who do you like better, Daniel or the other intern? And I think more than half of them said me. So just shows how likable I am. But besides the point, I just felt another problem was that I think the management felt I was too close to the kids, and I don't know exactly what that would mean to you, but basically I suppose, good friends with all the kids, or at least I treated them with respect. And I do mean like genuine respect. I appreciated most of them as actors. I thought they were, for the most part, very talented. And even if they didn't want to be an actor, like some of them didn't want to be actors, they just were doing this because either their parents are telling them to do it, or because their parents want them to do it, so to speak, or just because their parents say, hey, you have nothing to do, so go act, that type of stuff. Even those kids, like whatever you want to do in the future, I wish you luck in your endeavors. Look sad, whatever. And I honestly feel that because of the fact they liked me, and I kind of did see this, some of the kids actually started rebelling against teachers. Not a good, and it's not like I advocated for this, by the way, but it's one of those things like, ugh, not a good idea. And granted, some of them did call my name out. These kids are like, why are you doing this? It's because we like Daniel more. I'm like, I really don't know what to say. Thank you, but don't rebel. So I actually did kind of get in trouble for that, just because I was liked more than the teachers themselves. I got in trouble for that, even though my job was babysitting them, essentially. So yeah, I mean, that was one of those things I just found weird. I honestly, even to this day, I have no idea how to react. Thank you for liking me. I know I'm cool. And I know I'm a child at heart. Again, just don't rebel against the teacher. And yeah, so yeah. Now going back to just the class overall, though, as I said before, what I did when I was a student was showcases. I did a showcase, I did a performance, a little improv show, and that's it. What they're doing is a full-on play, okay? Like a full-on play. Now, during the showcase, I remember my mom, she paid, or at least for the classes I took, she paid, I think, like $100, okay, give or take. Okay, now during the plays, the parents normally had, and it depends on some other stuff like their taxes or whatever for some reason, but even the fact that they had to pay for this is kind of a thing, an issue I have with this. But usually, I think the minimum they had to pay, at least I've seen one parent pay, was like $70, give or take, and I think the most one parent had to pay was like $200 or $300, give or take. Yeah, it was rumored, it was just like rumors. It's nothing that I can see, given the fact that I wasn't really on the payroll and I wasn't really allowed to input that type of data. But that's from what I heard, that's more or less the general consensus, that the most any parent had to pay was $200 or $300. And my first problem with this is, this is a show, right? Like, this isn't a showcase. Like, the showcase I could kind of see, I guess, but this is a show. You shouldn't be charging them per se. You want them to be a part of your show, so why are you charging them? I know this is a conservatory, and one of my friends who actually she did audition for the production of Hairspray, I believe, or was it Hairspray or Clueless or something like that? I forget, but she auditioned for it, and she said basically it was the same thing. She's like, I'm not gonna be part of a production if I have to pay for it, because why? First off, they're overcharging me, and they overcharged her like it was a lot of money. It was like $150, she says, which I actually do find it very believable. And it's one of those things. If you want the person, why are you charging them? And it doesn't really help when you're also charging the parents later on when the show actually premieres, like $20 or $30 for a seat. I mean, right there, everything's just overpriced to hell. And this is also another problem I had even with me when I was a student, during the showcase. my mom, she had to pay like $100, give or take, just for me to be part of the class. But then at the same time, when the showcase came, and it was like when the showcase came, they charged her a seat, to sit down, $30. So I mean, I understand they're trying to get as much money as possible, but that's an air stage company, and I've been to other conservatories and I know their system. If there's a showcase, for example, they will charge the for the class. However, they won't charge for ticket sales when the showcase happens. So it's one of those things like and Aero Stage Company so far is the only company I've found down here in South Florida who does that, to my knowledge. So yeah, and even for the playthings. Now, granted, there are a few conservatories who do charge the rehearsals as classes, but even after that, they don't charge for ticket sales afterwards. They don't charge the ticket sales. Either your child or the actor or whatever. Either the actor is cast in a role in the play without charging them, and then they charge the audience, or they do charge the child or the player, the actor, and then they don't charge the parents, if you know what I mean. That's what I found. There's two ways to it, but no, Aerostage Company does both. They charge the actor, and then they charge the parents to watch the show. And yeah, and honestly, it also doesn't help that they also make the DVDs for these shows, and then they also overcharge the crap out of that. And it's like a DVD. It's not even a Blu-ray, by the way. It's just a simple DVD. For like $30, give or take. And yeah, I mean, I know the prices eventually go down as every new show comes out, so to speak. But I know the cheapest DVD there's like $15, I want to say, at least last time I was there. I don't know if they changed the pricing, but yeah, I mean, that's just another problem I have with them. It's the fact they just charge for everything. And I know money is king. Obviously capitalism, consumerism. You want as much money as possible, but even after that, just kind of shady business practices, in my opinion. It's just something I really didn't like. I didn't really understand per se, and I still don't understand. And I'm not the only one who disagrees with their business practices. Like I know parents complained to me, like, why are you doing this? Like, don't talk to me. I'm honestly not just an intern. They don't really tell me that much to begin with. If you want to ask anybody, ask her, the other secretary who actually was on the payroll, or ask the co-manager or the manager. Me, they don't give me enough information. I'm just an intern, whatever. And even after that, and then many parents got mad at the managers, rightfully so, for not giving me information, because I'm also in part a secretary, and then I can't really tell parents the information they need. Yeah, so you kind of see where this is going. So my last show with them, or backstage, was Cinderella, I believe. Yeah, Cinderella. And I only did one show with them. Now, every show they have is 4 shows, give or take. It's 1 on Fridays, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. Is from what I remember. Maybe sometimes 2 on Sundays, depending on actually what type of play it is. But that's more or less the actual like run of the show, okay? And yeah, now for Cinderella, the reason I was fired / quit is actually because of this. Now, obviously, during a theater show, you're not supposed to record. First off, and they say this at the start before the show begins, is that, like, thank you for coming, and just remember that you're not allowed to film, so please don't take out your phones. If you catch you, we'll tell one of our security guards or whatever. They called us security. It was just really me and like the other intern and just one other employee who also worked there. And all we really did is like, hey, can you please not film or take pictures, or etc, etc, etc. And that's really it. I don't know why they called us security, but maybe to seem as if we were more menacing. I don't know. But besides the point. So yeah. So I saw the manager, the co-manager. She saw one of the parents, and she was on the front row, or like, yeah, I believe it was like the front row, or the second front row, whatever, the second or the second row behind the front row. It was one of the first 2 rows, whatever. And she was like, hey, can you please tell this parent to shut off their phones, or they'll be kicked out. So I go up to them, And I'm like, Miss, can you please not, can you please turn off your phone? You're not allowed to record. I understand you really enjoyed the show. I understand you enjoy the performances, but remember, we will have a DVD in the upcoming months, so you can watch the performances. Please just enjoy the show without your phone. Completely ignore me. She was like this, and I was like right here. I'm like, hey, miss, can you please? No response. She ignored me. Okay. Now I assume the guy next to her was her husband, to be honest, because the husband kind of looked at me, and it was one of those things like, I feel bad for you. Like, man, I feel bad for you. It was one of those things like, I feel bad for you, but I think you should leave before things get worse. It was like just one of those kind of looks. So yeah, but I had to, because the manager was still looking behind me, like also giving me like, get them off their phone now type of look. So I'm like, so I basically put my hand in front of her phone at this point. I'm like, excuse me, miss. And I'm still trying to whisper, so as not to interrupt anybody else. And at this point, I was getting a few shushes at this point. So I'm like, excuse me, miss, you can't record the show. And again, I understand you enjoy the show a lot, but again, the DVD will be out within a couple months. Can you please turn off your phone, or else I'm afraid I'm gonna have to kick you out. Whatever. Again, ignores me. Nothing. The man next to her says, please. It was like, please, honey, can you please put away your phone? Okay, ignoring him as well. Okay, whatever. Then, and here's where you guys can maybe see her point, because it's one of those things I shouldn't really have done per se, but at the same time, it wasn't really that bad. So I lightly like this tapped her on the shoulder, like this, to get her attention. This did get her attention, by the way. And I'm like, excuse me, miss, you're not supposed to record your phone, show with your phone. Again, we'll have a DVD, etc., etc., etc. And she's like, well, that's not fair, because I paid to be on the seat and I want to see the show. I'm like, okay, that's perfectly fine. You can see the show. And again, we ourselves are also recording it, and the DVD will be out within the next couple months. If you want to buy, pre-order it, just go to your front desk, whatever. And the man next to her husband, he was like, thank you. And, that's basically it. I didn't really think much of the encounter till later that night, actually, when I was cleaning up some of the stuff from the audience. They always leave like little papers or like plastic bags or whatever, some just random little garbage. So I'm picking it up, right? And the woman comes up behind me with her husband. And the husband kind of looks, he looks bad. He feels bad for me, essentially, because he's like, honey, don't say anything to him. It wasn't really that big of a deal, but she was furious. And basically, she's like, you're not allowed to touch me. You weren't supposed to touch me. That's sexual assault. That's sexual harassment. I could report you. I could get you fired. I'm like, miss, you were told before the show that you weren't supposed to record the show. We'll have a DVD, as I said before. You could pre-order the DVD at the front desk. I basically, and that's basically all I said before she cut me off. And she's like, I'm gonna go talk to the manager. She actually did say the manager's name, but I'm not gonna, go into that. The husband again, he's like, you don't have to talk. It wasn't really that big a deal. Whatever. The husband's like, that wasn't really that big of a deal. You're just making a mess. You're making a scene. I'm like, what? The boy's just doing his job. The husband understood where I was coming from. All I know is that 2 days later, the assistant manager, or the assistant to the co-manager, or whatever, she calls me and says, hey, what's your mom's email? Pretty odd question if you ask me, but I really wasn't thinking that much, because I was falling asleep on the bus. I was coming back from school. I was falling asleep on the bus, and I just wanted to sleep that day, because I think I was just sick or something. I just had a bad headache or something like that. But I just wanted to sleep, so I sent her my mom's email. Come to find out that later that day, or I don't know if it was later that day or like the next day, but I was essentially fired. Yeah, basically they contacted my mom and said, and basically their reason for as to why I was fired is because I came late often. Now, I will admit, did I come late? Yes, I did come late more than a few times than I should have. I'm not gonna deny. However, and granted, you may find this as a BS excuse, the metro system here, or just the metro and bus system here, just sucks. You could come out 2 hours, you could come out on time 2 hours and still be late. that did happen to me one time. The bus broke down. The Metro Rail wasn't working that day, and I actually came late 2 hours, and I had to go. And I was supposed to be there for from I think 10 to 1, and I got there at no, it was 9 to 1, and I got there at 12, and I'm like, I have to leave in an hour, because that was my shift that day. I mean, and I actually that day I was willing to stay later. However, the manager's like, no, I want you out at 1. So there really wasn't much I could have done in that situation. So yeah, it turns out I was fired, and the reason I was fired, and that's the reason I was late, and also immature and disrespectful. And really, I think the part that was immature and disrespectful probably has to do with the fact that the kids just liked me, and just because I acted a bit more like the kids, and I understood the kids, and actually respected the kids as actual actors, whereas the manager, she didn't really respect them per se. She was like, money bags. Ooh, so yeah, you're like, let's see, your parents paid $200 for you to be here, so I'm gonna give you special treatment, but your parents paid about $80 to be here, so I'm just gonna, yeah, whatever you want, fuck it, bye. Oh yeah, yeah, oh, that's a really interesting story, honey. How do you, just blatant favoritism galore. And that's another thing I actually did call it out once, because the kid, she, well, I called out the assistant manager, to be honest. However, I do know that the co-manager eventually did find out about this, because she also did talk to me about it. But essentially, I'm like, hey, you shouldn't be disrespecting the kids like that. I mean, they're still, the parents paid good money to be here for them to learn. I basically called them out on that, and the parents fucking loved the fact that I stood up to their child, and all the parents liked me as well. The majority of the parents. Some of them didn't really like me. Some of them just didn't really care for me, to be honest. But the majority of the parents did like me, and they're like, yeah, thank you for standing up for my children. Why you're not getting paid. That type of stuff. And look, sad, whatever. So yeah. So in terms of me being immature, that's why. Now, come to find out, and this is really interesting actually, and I actually didn't know this at the time that I was fired. But the other intern, they told me that the parent that had complained on me and had actually gotten me fired was actually a huge supporter or a huge sponsor of Area Stage Company as a whole. And in part, that's why I was fired, because they were a huge sponsor. And let's see, who do you want to take care of more, your sponsor or just your intern and whatever? So obviously, take out the intern to keep your sponsor happy. Done. Okay, that was the first thing I found out. Which I actually kind of do like their email. If I could get my mom to send it again or whatever, because I don't know where that email went. But besides the point, during their email, they basically said that they were spending too much money on me, which even my mom questioned, because they didn't spend any money on me. They didn't pay me. They never paid for my lunch or dinner, and that's about it. And I mean, I never understood what that comment. They never spent money on me, period. So yeah. But another thing I actually found out is that the daughter of this particular mother, this mother, I don't know why she didn't like me in general, but she had actually used her daughter before to try to get me fired twice. And I actually didn't know this at first. However, I do remember the incidents. Now, there's 2 incidents with this daughter. Yeah, 2 incidents with the daughter. Now, the first incident with the daughter was basically I don't remember if it was she who dropped something or one of her friends, but someone had dropped something, and I was just basically picking it up. As I'm coming back up to basically stand up, I accidentally hit her a bit with my arm. It was more like I accidentally hit her with my arm, and I hit her arm with my arm, and basically just getting up. And I remember she cried. She felt really offended. She cried, and this girl was 7 or 8 years old. I want to say for sure she was 7 or 8 years old, and she cried. And I remember, and I got a huge talking to about that, how I shouldn't be touching the kids or whatever, which I explained my side of the situation. Hey, it was just a simple accident. I was just getting back up. I didn't notice she was there, whatever, and yeah. And so that was the first issue with this particular girl. The second issue with this particular girl per se was one day after one of the shows, the 2 children have the boys and the girls have 2 separate dressing rooms. However, the racks, the clothing racks are all on one side, and it just so happened to be on the girls' side. So all the boys were just getting the clothes. They were in there before the girls, so they could get their clothes and just go to the other side to change. One of the kids had dropped his trousers, his pants, and I was just gonna go get him. Me, not really thinking that the girls were there already. I just kind of went in, and some of the girls had started changing at this point, or they're starting to take off their clothes. I'm like, oh, sorry, I just need this boy's pants. Can I just please get it? And that's about it. I'm like, I just wanted the boy's pants so he could change, and that's about it. Turns out I also got a complaint on that one for being perverted and having sexual intentions when all I wanted to do was get the pants for some boy who had accidentally dropped them, and that's about it. So yeah, I don't know why the girl and the mom had a vendetta against me per se, but that's about it. And that's basically my issue with Area Stage Community. Again, I will admit that they did inspire me as an actor very early on. They, showed me how far I could go with improv. They showed me how they gave me an interest in Shakespeare and showed me how to do Shakespeare very early on. They showed me how to do dramatic and comedic. But at the same time, they just also had a lot of problems, both from a financial standpoint and just their business practices, and just the way they overall just treated both their students and their employees. Aside from me, I wasn't the only one being mistreated per se. There was another employee, and she was actually on the payroll, who every time she did something wrong, she would be screamed at by the co-manager, and even the assistant manager herself, or the assistant to the co-manager, whatever you want to call her, even her at times would be screamed at by the co-manager. So yeah, and it's just the co-manager. I don't feel like the manager, like the head manager, actually knows what the co-manager does most of the time, because they're not there most of the time. They're doing stuff behind the scenes. It's normally the co-manager who's seen as the head of the house, so to speak. So, and she's the one who usually is the one who has blatant favoritism to her students and just disrespects both either me or some of the other staff, and it's just not acceptable in my opinion. And then the reason for the way I was fired as well, it just made no sense. And the reason I say it's fired / quit is because I actually did call the assistant manager, because she still needed to sign off on my hours, and she's like, oh yes, I'll sign them, but after this, whatever. And I'm like, okay, good. I mean, I don't want to come back there. To begin with, I was actually thinking of not going back there for my second year or whatever, because at this point I just really didn't like the business practices, and I was actually heavily considering at that point to not go back for my senior year. And that honestly just sealed, put the last nail in the coffin that I definitely was not going to be there. And I'm essentially banned from there, I suppose. I mean, I guess when you're fired from a place, you're essentially banned as well, per se. So I haven't returned there. But some of my friends who still go there, they're like, some of those problems are still persist. Some of them say they've gotten slightly better. Some of them say they've gotten slightly worse. Either way, for the most part, it seems like it's the same. The co-manager is still disrespecting the students. And some of the staff, and they're still overcharging the crap out of stuff. And actually, the other intern who worked with me on that, for example, who was also another glorified babysitter, they actually also got fired for similar reasons to me, for basically being immature and for basically possibly having ill intentions with the children, which again, I really don't know what that means. I didn't get that, to be honest. I didn't get ill intentions with the children. I don't know why they got that one, to be honest, when most of the children like me. I guess it's one of those things, like once I got fired, most of the children probably latched on to the other intern, and then, I don't know what happens. And we were both very friendly towards the stranger. And again, we were very respectful to them. We actually really liked most of their talents. And we were often, to be like, hey, great job, man, or, you go, girl, whatever. We'd give them high fives, and stuff like that. So it'd be very, it was always very good for the most part. I mean, I think the worst that I got was one time when I actually did get in trouble. I kind of got in trouble for this one, but at the same time, the students actually did rightfully get in trouble for this one, because I actually did say, can you please stop? Is that I was actually, one of the rooms, they actually have this huge mirror, and I was looking at something like here, my hairline or something like that, because I had a few pimples at the time right there. And for some reason, one of the girls, she wanted a hug, and I'm like, I don't know. No, I think that's going a bit too far, to be honest, but screw it, whatever. One of the other girls then saw that, and she's like, ooh, he's giving piggyback rides. And then like four or five kids, I'm like, yo, I'm not giving piggyback rides. Get off my back. Like, legit, I don't want to get in trouble right now. And I actually did get in trouble for that, but it's one of those things. I took most of the blame for the children, but at the same time, the children were at fault. But I still took most of the blame, to be honest, because I knew they were gonna get in trouble. And if they got, and I've seen them when they got in trouble, and when they get in trouble, they're like, for some reason, they're severely punished. Like, they're not allowed to talk at all for the rest of class. They're not allowed to eat for the rest of class, or they are allowed to eat like during their lunch breaks, but their time gets cut. Their time gets cut essentially. So yeah, that's basically my problem with Air Stage Company. It's just the way they treat their customers and their and some of their employees, right? Specifically the co-manager and the assistant manager, or the assistant to the co-manager. She's kind of both, to be honest. But those are my two problems with, and it's particularly those two people. Like everybody else at Area Stage, for the most part, employee and staff, for the most part, everybody else is fantastic to work with. And then just customer wise, or like student and parents wise, or whatever, for the most part, like I will say, there were some bad apples in both students and the parents, but for the most part, everybody there was really friendly and really great to work with and really fun to hang out with. Babysitting them or whatever, or really fun to talk to with the parents. You're like, yeah, this is how it's going on. This is how I'm doing this, whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's basically my issue with Air Stage Company. Again, if anybody associated with Area Stage Company, or whether you be a customer or a staff member of Area Stage Company, keep in mind that I'm not bashing you. I'm also giving you credit for some stuff. You guys actually do have some pretty good acting programs. I'm not going to deny that. You guys also have some pretty great singing programs. I just feel your major issues is just the way you treat your customers and your staff, as well as the fact that you just overcharge the living crap out of everything, when some of your competitors don't even do that, or not even to the extent that you do. And I understand greed and money is, everything. Money is king, but I mean, I feel like that's why the One American Mile, Theater American Mile, is a game of support. I'm pretty sure the Adrian Arch Center has been has been a huge player in the recent years, to be honest. So Actors Playhouse, that's the One American Mile. The Actors Playhouse, they've been gaining more notoriety, or it was positive notoriety. They've garnered more attention recently for their shows, and I've seen some of their shows, and I'm not gonna lie, despite the fact that I've had my connections to Area Stage, the shows at Area Stage, to a degree, are a mess. I'm not gonna lie. Whereas the one at Miracle Mile, the Actors Playhouse, those are fantastic in my opinion. I mean, granted, there are a few issues here and there, but it's not as big as a mess as it is in Area Stage. And granted, Adrian Arch Center is not a theater company per se, but it's more of it's more like a theater hall, but still, they have their shit together, and that's more or less what Area Stage Company is trying to do. They're trying to imitate Adrian Arch and make it seem like they have their shit together, when in reality, they don't have their shit together half the time. So, again, hopefully you guys, if anybody sees this video, if anybody who's associated with Area Stage Company sees this video, again, keep in mind that I am complimenting you on some of your stuff, like your teaching styles and all your teachers and everybody. Like 99% of your staff is fantastic to work with, and they were great. I learned a lot from everybody there. I also learned a lot from the students. I'm not gonna lie, whether it be some of the other students that I worked with while I was a student myself, or some of the other students that I had to babysit, whatever it is. I learned a lot. I also learned a lot from backstage, just being backstage, and how that whole situation, works out. I learned some costuming, some lighting, and all that, and it was all great. But at the same time, you guys do have faults, and I just hope you guys can improve from them, because from what I hear, it just doesn't seem like you've improved much, if at all, from them. And possibly you may have gotten slightly worse. So, that's basically it. If anybody from not Adrian or Center, if anybody from Area Stage Company wants to contact me, for whatever reason, I mean, go ahead, just message me, and, whatever, we'll go from there. But in reality, I really don't have any bad blood against you, but those are just my major problems. I know I may seem like I do have bad blood, but really, in sense, this is me saying, I forgive you. This video, in a sense, is me saying, I forgive you for your faults, but keep in mind, you do have your faults, and I do think you should improve upon them. And that's hopefully what you guys can do after watching this video. If you guys do happen to watch this video, And yeah, I mean that's basically my problem with Area Stage Company. That's basically my history with Area Stage Company from the time I was a student to basically a glorified babysitter when I was in reality an intern. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that's basically it for now. Hopefully, very fast, if you are a customer, hopefully this doesn't deter you from going to Air Stage Company, because again, most of the shows are good. It's just that most of their adult shows. Let me rephrase that. Most of their adult shows, like such as the Nether, for example, are fantastic. It's most of their kids shows that are a fucking mess. Okay, their kids shows are a mess. They're cute and yes, they are fun to watch, but in general, they're kind of a mess. I'm not gonna lie, but their adult shows are maybe some of the best, which I will say, I will admit, maybe does rival the Actors Playhouse. And yeah, okay, the kids shows are cute to watch. However, most everybody objectively can say they are a bit of a mess. Their adult shows are brilliant in my opinion, and I do love their adult shows, and I have seen some of their adult shows, and they are brilliant, and I do think they rival that of Actors Playhouse or even Agent Art Center. Okay, and even some of the best plays I've seen are actually better than even Broadway, which I have seen a few Broadway plays. Sadly, nothing like Hamilton, but I have seen a few Broadway plays, and even I will admit, even the Nether one, it's the Nether. For example, fantastic. Or even I forget what it's called, the Ballad of Janice Matthews, right? Yeah, something like that. Ballad of Janice Matthews. That was another brilliant show, and it was actually created by one of the employees there. So, they definitely do have some great shows when it comes to adult themes, to like adult shows, so to speak. So like teenage and up. So like anything over the age of like 13, I want to say, or 13, 14, 15, is brilliant. But anything below that, cute but a mess. Okay, I'm like, and I could say that because I was both backstage and I saw it from both ways. And this is something I kind of even picked up even before I became an employee there. Like even the showcases were kind of a mess, which I'd have to admit when I was there as a student. Like, even the showcases were a bit of a mess. But yeah, overall, I mean that's all I can say. I mean, again, Aerostage Company, if anybody from there is watching this, I forgive you for your faults. Just again, remember you have faults. It's okay to admit them, and hopefully, you guys can improve upon your faults. Is basically what I'm hoping for, and because I actually do want you guys to succeed. I mean, you guys have succeeded because you've been around for about what 30, 40 years, I think. But you guys are starting to like kind of go downhill a bit, and I feel like in part has to do with just your overall negative business practices. And that's why Actors Playhouse is starting to go up. That's why Asian Art Center has started to go up very recently. Because before like 2012, I want to say, Asian Art Center didn't really have much to offer, and it was mostly just Actors Playhouse and every stage. But now Asian Art Center has actually become a huge player. So, and there's a bunch of other smaller theater companies who are actually also starting to rise up. I mean, I know there's one by in Fort Lauderdale. I forget the name right now. But they called me up one day. It's like, hey, do you want to do a show? Help us do a show. And I talked to the managers there, and they were really nice. The reason I didn't do the show for them is because it was just too far traveling wise. But that's besides the point. So, I mean, again, just hopefully you guys can get your shit together. And again, I just don't want any bad blood between us. And don't copyright this fucking video just because I'm saying the truth. I know that's a huge thing on YouTube. Don't do it. It's not really wise business practices, by the way. I'm just gonna say that. And if you do it, I'm definitely gonna call you out. I'm just saying. And that would really not make you look good. Just saying. So yeah. That's basically it for now. That's basically it for my history on Air Stage Company from student to intern. And yeah, I know this video was longer than expected. I actually didn't think it was going to be that long either. I thought it was going to be done by around the 25 to 30 minute mark, I definitely overestimated that, but yeah. This is Daniel Mart, signing off.